there's managers that I think I would love to manage Tranmere going into the future in a more stable environment, maybe with a bit of more backing. But only I think they'd want guarantees that, look, if we go down because I'm coming in late, will I still have the reins next year? They'd want those guarantees. If it's just a pure firefighting job from now until the end of the season, I don't think there's going to be many out there who would be an improvement on Crosby. And interesting you talk there, Matt, about the coaching. Probably it could easily be then with Parkinson guilt by association almost. That he's just there. I find it very interesting then that, Adkins has brought Crosby in. Presumably that's his choice. He's worked with him before. And, if Adkins isn't listening to his coaches, Crosby's one of the first things Crosby's done is call Josh Hawkes and get him back involved. Surely he had suggested to Adkins, we need to get him in the squad. If Adkins has ignored that, that's absolutely astonishing. And again, Josh Hawkes isn't widely universally liked by Tranmere fans. There's certainly fans out there who think he's overrated, and that's fine. It's opinions, and that's great. That's what we all come on here for, and it'd be boring if we all agreed. But I think, as evidenced by his goal against Bromley, we've lacked a player all season who has a knack of, Regan Hendry gets it wide. His first thought is to dart across the near post and sweeps it in. And we haven't had anyone like that all season because we've been one of the most blunt teams in the country. So, Crosby's clearly a competent coach. He can see what was needed, and he's been fairly straightforward in his interview. There's not been any analogies that are nonsense, and he said, first interview, but we've worked hard out there, but that's a bare minimum. Not talking as if we're shooting for the stars because the players have ran around a bit, and I don't think he's reinvented the wheel. I don't think he's come in and been some tactical genius. I just think he's done what a lot of us would have done. And I think what we've got to be careful of is, and this isn't to discredit him at all, as I say, I like him. He's got 5 points from 3 games. There's certainly been an uptick performance, and that's all great. But I think what we've got to be careful is if we're comparing him to what was such a low baseline. I mean, it was as bad as we've ever... I think Adkins is the worst manager I've ever seen manage Tranmere in my time. And I've seen some shockers. I've seen Barnes and, Dawes and interim spells that were a disaster. In terms of what was his experience and what we were seeing and what we were hearing in interviews, it's the worst Mickey Adams for me. Worst I've ever seen. So that's in my opinion. So we're comparing it to a pretty low baseline. So I think it was always going to improve. I genuinely think most 99% of managers we would have brought in would have been better than this. So yeah, it gets it to the end of the season. You would like to think we've got that M word now, momentum building. I think the players seem to like him. Hendry said, as far as he was concerned before the Bromley game, that he was the manager until the end of the season. He said there's a lot more energy around the training ground now, and and hopefully a bit of belief. So I think he's earned it. I said before the Bromley game, that was a massive game for me because 2 points from 2 games. While there was an uptick in performance, we needed that win. He got the win. So yeah, I didn't really have any complaints when it was confirmed, and I haven't now. And I hope that he achieves the goal of survival, and then I hope he gets a job, a good job elsewhere. I just think as a football club, we will need to move on in the summer.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? What you say about Adkins bringing him in, because when he came in, you thought, well, he's going to seek his ideas and this is going to be his right-hand man. And I know that Tranmere did explore the option of bringing him in last summer, for example, and there was talk about that happening then. And you wondered if that would be, those two linking up would be the thing that would push Tranmere on. Remember when Jacko came in with Mickey, and I remember interviewing Mickey Mellon and saying, what does Jacko bring with him? And he basically said all the tactics, everything, big book of training sessions that he can put on. And the two just worked really well together. And you wondered if Crosby coming in would be the difference maker, particularly when he arrived, when he did, just before Christmas, wasn't he? And nothing changed. That was the thing for me. Nothing changed. So you bring in this guy in and presumably seeking his counsel on team selection, tactics, who's a good player, who's not a good player, just generally getting his opinion. The only thing that I can see that changed around the time Crosby came in was Sol Solomon getting more game time. Other than that, maybe you'd argue for Merry getting a little bit more game time, but Hawks was left out in the cold. The formation largely stayed the same. It was the same players pretty much every week. And you're right, as soon as the new managers come in, there has been a little tweak in the formation. I know he says it's 5 at the back, but for me, it's an incredibly fluid formation that flits very, very quickly from a 4 to a 5, pushing the extra man into midfield and therefore pushing the extra man to just behind the striker. We're seeing Dennis have a run of games, which he never got under Adkins. We're seeing Hawks coming into the team. But on top of that, we've seen 2 big players left out of the starting lineup, Connor Jennings and Tom Davis. Now, I know latterly Davis has been struggling with a little bit of an injury, but they were big calls made by the manager, calls that Adkins wasn't prepared to make. Do I think they're right? I personally would see Connor play a little bit more football, but maybe taking him out of the firing line was what he needed. But they were big calls. Something changed. So in that sense, you do look at it and go, why did he come in the first place? Because clearly he had ideas that weren't listened to.